examine beliefs that you have, or ideas you have, really specifically related to business and investing is kind of what we harped on the most, and make sure it's not ideas that you've held fixed in your mind forever, that aren't relevant to your current life station and life position and the current market and everything else. Because What's up, everybody? Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkost with another episode of the Big Picture Blueprint, where we are forcing you guys to just listen to Dan and myself monologue for 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how long we can tolerate the sound of our own voices. But before we dive into today's show, Dan, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's been an interesting couple of months. We had, for our previous conversation a few weeks ago, quite a few deals fall out of contract, but then we have a ton in the Carolinas under contract to sell, and direct-to-seller marketing's yielding the highest returns for us that it has in a very long time. So it's a mixed bag, but overall good.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's same on my end. Realtor stuff is moving along nicely. About to close in on $1 million in total volume, about a month and a half in, and that's fun. Extra money, extra income, getting to help lots of people, and also getting to pretend to be a realtor. I played golf twice yesterday, which is
Realtor or politician? That sounds like a politician's life.
I know, right? Well, hey, one of them was a par 3 tournament and I won, so I made like $245. So watch out. Maybe I'll just go pro golfing instead. But today our show is really kind of about things that we've changed our minds about. I think for a lot of us in this industry, especially those of us that are in our 20s and early 30s and potentially even 40s, we've learned so much about business through podcasts and books that have come out in the last couple of decades that are about entrepreneurship and financial freedom and retiring early and all these different ideas and kind of agreements we made with ourselves potentially when we were teenagers. And I think that if you're not checking yourself regularly, you might find yourself being stuck in a loop or something like that with an idea that you created when you were closer to 10 years old than when you were 30 years old. But we've got a good amount of things that we'll run through. But Dan, add on to that before we jump in.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And I think you said that really well, because one of the things we'll spend a lot of time on is the whole idea of financial freedom. I was introduced to real estate, to investing by two things. I found Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Bigger Pockets right around the same time. And of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is more about the idea of making money off of assets as opposed to your just labor. And then Bigger Pockets was all about, at least at the time, financial freedom, quitting your job, buying a few rental properties and having cash flow, quitting your job. And I have made, I think, so many bad and short-sighted decisions because that's how I was introduced to real estate and this specific business, where I'm unlearning those things, and I think making a lot of progress because of that.
Yeah, and I feel like it actually, this retire early, financial independence and everything like that can end up leading to a life that might end up being more miserable than the traditional corporate have a job, save up money, invest wisely, than people realize. It's stressful being your own boss. It's stressful owning and operating a company. And I think we'll talk a little bit about life and mindset related things we've changed our minds on, as well as business related mindset things we've changed. But Dan, why don't you go first with something off your list?
Yeah, well, okay. It's a perfect intro into a real life example and an example of how I hope this can be valuable to a lot of people listening, where I was talking to a guy. He's younger than I am. He's like 26. He's really young. And he has a really profitable land business. And oh man, I just want to outsource acquisitions. I'm like, man, if you're making what you're telling me you're making, which I think he is, my bullshit radar wasn't going off at all with this guy. And triple down on that, work your butt off and just funnel all this money into whether it's more land deals or some sort of investments. I made this mistake of, it's all about financial freedom and not working and having other people do everything. And I want to talk about that, but no, especially when you're young and you're doing well, double, triple down. Don't be afraid to work, especially if it's working and you're, printing money. you can make it so far in a few years, right? I would tell that guy, get a transaction coordinator and maybe a data admin, but don't stop the sales side of it because that's the most important thing, and make as much money as you can while it's going well.
Yeah, and I think we both have a few bullet points that are related to this. Of it really kind of comes down to outsourcing everything, and not just outsourcing the most important function of the job, which is sales, which Dan and I both regret doing that too early and not outsourcing the correct stuff. So I think something that I'm personally working on related to this, it's not exactly something I've changed my mind on, but it's something I'm acting on, which is taking my own advice of, I tell people, don't outsource sales, outsource the administrative stuff. And I've kind of done that. My wife does work part-time in the business and everything like that, and that's very helpful for a lot of things. And I've got a transaction coordinator now in the realtor business, which I'm, working on that. But next week I'm meeting with a full-time administrative assistant service that can do transaction coordination, can do business administration management and everything like that for not a lot of money, that I truly believe will actually make me just so much more effective and so much more organized. Because I feel like, I feel overwhelmed with how much I'm doing, and it's not the stuff that I enjoy doing, which is sales. And so I think that's another component of it too, of whenever you're outsourcing stuff, don't necessarily outsource the stuff that you're good at and that you actually enjoy, because then you end up creating a job that you hate. I think that within this business, I missed doing sales. I missed meeting landowners. I've got appointments every day, all day now, on the realtor side and the investment side, in person with people. And that energizes me so much that I regret having spent, the last couple of years having totally outsourced those positions to someone else, regardless of if it means I'm working more. I am working more. I'm working into the evenings. I don't stop working at 4 like I used to. I am working oftentimes until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and that's okay. It's okay to work really hard for a long time, especially if you enjoy it. So I think that the main point that we're really driving in here is, don't listen to the idea that you need to delegate everything possible. You really need to learn how to run your own business, and it takes years to learn how to do that before you have the ability to outsource it. Don't outsource the function that's the most important of the job and the thing that you enjoy the most, and make sure you actually listen to your own advice. And that's something that Dan and I probably need to do a better job at, do as I say, not as I do, type of thing, where I think, Dan, it's probably time for you to get like a full-time administrative assistant to help manage your life better. Because we both have so much going on all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is too, obviously we both like working, and maybe you're out there, you're like, I don't want to work, or maybe your spouse is about to have a couple kids and you're at that stage where I have a reason why I don't want to work for these next few years. But the concept still applies, where trying to outsource everything too soon can shortchange you to the extent that you end up never really getting there. When I think about, if I had not hired an acquisition manager and I tripled down on sales and marketing 4 or 5 years ago and gone all out, I could have made substantially more money, put it into, again, just let's say I wanted to play small and just be in a position where I had a paid off house and maybe a paid off couple rentals. So I was, truly financially independent, right? Well, I could have been far more successful at doing that if I hadn't stopped and outsourced things and tried to live financially, live without really working too soon. I did that too soon. I outsourced things too soon, and I sold myself short, especially when I had markets that were producing like crazy, a very active, real estate market in general. And I sold myself short. And so I think that, even if you are that person that legitimately wants to get to a point where you're not working or working very little, you're going to need to go all out for several years at least. And you can get there much sooner than kind of half-assing it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of along the same train is just some of the ideas of having a job and how negatively I looked at the idea of having to work for someone, whether it's a large corporation, even working for someone else in a small business or something in between that. And I think that For everybody, and I think we all kind of live in our own biases. But for me, I do think it was probably the right decision to leave the industry and the company that I was in, because I didn't enjoy it, and the money was fine, but it wasn't golden handcuffs to any sort of degree. But I think that it potentially would have been really beneficial for me to have found some small business and worked in like an acquisition manager role for someone for a while that had a really well-functioning machine. And I think I give that advice to people that maybe, and maybe right or wrong or otherwise, for me, I was in a financial position where I was able to do it. But for the people that aren't in a financial position to even be able to spend money marketing their, within their own business that they're trying to start, you might be better served working for someone else in a, salary and commission role. I think it's the same train of thought of, quit your job, be your own boss, retire early, financial independence. If you have $5,000 saved up, it's illogical to think that you're in a position to do that. And I think that so many people are trying to sell you something whenever they say, well, you need to bet on yourself and all this other stuff. It's the same idea around don't have, some financial planner manage your money. It's like, well, they're professionals and they've been doing this for a lot longer than I have. So why would I not trust other people to do it? Same idea with coming in and working for someone else in a business, because Dan, I think you got a lot of experience when you were younger that translated to what you're doing, like managing rental portfolios, like working in the like kind of small, building landscaping businesses, doing all this stuff that you got at a very young age that translated directly to what you're doing now. I think for the person that is the corporate employee that has like an okay job, but not a ton saved up, like jumping into entrepreneurship is really fucking hard. And I think that if you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure. And yeah, there's a lot of motivation whenever you put your back against the wall and you force yourself to get very uncomfortable. But the thing is, you don't necessarily have to. I think that you can help build someone else's business and then go off on your own. Or you could just help build someone else's business and get equity in the company. And that's okay. It's okay to work for someone else. And I think that's something that I've really changed my mind on over the past few years.
Yeah, I would agree with that largely, and I also would say I'm not the sort of person that wants to work for someone in the long run. So one way or another, I would have worked to, go off on my own. However, I could have, just like you said, found someone that owned a real estate business, worked for them directly for a few years. I'm thinking of someone back in Colorado Springs that I could have gotten my license and worked at his brokerage, and that would have been I probably would have made more money faster, potentially, doing that. But, ego can get in the way there, for sure, at least for me. I think a lot of, and I said this, but just to really codify it simply, I think a lot of what we're told on podcasts and the urgency around it and kind of the ego around quitting your job, financial independence, owning a bunch of units often leads to us selling ourselves short and ultimately taking longer to get to that goal than if we had not been given that poor advice, worked aggressively, and waited a little longer. I really think, and again, I definitely am an example of that. I think I would be further along if I had heard more from Alex Hormozy 7 years ago than Bigger Pockets.
Yeah. And it really comes down to, it's okay to work. Yeah. And whether it's for yourself or someone else, it's okay to work and work a lot and do it over and over and over again. And I think that's what's funny is yesterday was today's Friday, June 20th that we're recording this. Not sure when the show's going to come out, but yesterday was a federal holiday with Juneteenth. And with that came a round of golf and a golf tournament. And yeah, it was beneficial of I made some connections on the golf course that are going to benefit my business in the long run. Same thing with whenever I'm out golfing. I mean, on Monday, I met an attorney that does real estate law that I've already referred a deal to him. And, he's indebted to me, and also he course marshals, so he gets me cheaper golf. So I'm like, oh, this adds up. But regardless of me wanting to talk about golf, I think that when I'm out there, I really want to be kind of sitting down nose to the grindstone again, because we have so much going on that I'm excited about and working towards. And I feel like it's because I've reinserted myself into the sales position within our company, regardless of the fact that we have, salespeople on our team. I think me being so involved in it, uh, I think is huge. And I think I've heard that from a lot of the really, really successful people that, when we interviewed Pineda, Dan, he talked about it of how he has no non-producing management positions. Everyone in any position in his company is still involved in sales. And I think that's really, really good advice that would have benefited me in the long run if I hadn't just fully removed myself from the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm not getting my license, but I'm out actively working on some of these larger deals myself. And I have my own little pipeline in our CRM now too. And it's funny, one of my main acquisition guys was out of town for 10 days, and I called some of his leads for him and dealt with that. And I thought the same thing. I'm like, man, I do miss this to a degree. So yeah, man, don't be afraid to work, and just the ego around, oh, I've outsourced everything, is really dumb, and you can sell yourself short.
Yeah, absolutely. Continuing kind of along this train of thought, something I have here is having office space versus working from home. I think that the pandemic changed a lot of people's minds about their workspace and the work environment that they had. And I think for everyone, it's different. So this is something that I've personally changed my mind on. I'm not giving you any sort of advice or anything like that. But for me, I've become significantly more productive moving into an office space. Being able to separate work from home a little bit has been huge for me. I do miss seeing my wife throughout the middle of the day, but I also don't miss, the laundry machine and stuff going off in the middle of the day. Or even from a health perspective, like not having snacks around, or the ability to just go cook a full meal, at a random time. I'm eating less, I'm healthier. I'm able to like really just go into a place that I have no association with any sort of relaxation, and go in, be more productive. And it also creates a more professional, I think, workplace setting that I can say, hey, why don't you come meet me at my office? I can show you all the projects we have going on. We can sit down at the conference table over in this shared area, and, get paperwork done and everything like that. I think creates a more professional air than always having to meet at a restaurant or a coffee shop, or my home or basement. Not that I'm not excited to, welcome people into my home, but I think that having that creates a more professional image of yourself that you don't necessarily realize when you're in the small business setting how valuable it is until you end up getting that office space. And it's really, really nice. I enjoy it. I enjoy coming here and being able to just put my nose to the grindstone. And I leave whenever, and I get here whenever, even though it's relatively structured. So I think creates a greater sense of accountability too, of wanting to stay here because I'm paying for it. It forces me to be more productive too.
Yeah, I don't mind working from home. However, if I was starting over and I didn't have employees, I would much rather have hired people locally, got an office, and had them in the office. Because I just think it's so much hard. I know it's much harder to manage people remotely. It's working. I've been doing it for years, but I would rather have a local team. And if I was starting over, I would do it that way. If you're not in a major metro, that might be challenging. It might make more sense to do remote. But if you live in any sort of densely populated area, I would find people locally. And I remember when I was in Colorado Springs, one of our friends, he had an office there, and it was very oversized. There was tons of extra rooms. So I would just work from there whenever I wanted. And it was really useful. I met this number of people I sold lots to directly, and just meeting them in an office was useful. Meeting a new employee there, I did have a local employee. That was great. So I agree. Having an office can be very valuable.
Yeah, I think something on there that I want to take in a different direction. It's this like geographical freedom remoteness where we've really tripled down on the locality of our business and focusing on deals in our backyard. And I think what's funny about that is, I had my sales guy hammering Colorado for the past 6 months or so. And now I'm shifting him to a different market, not because we're getting out of Colorado, but more so because it's almost dumb to be like, hey, here's this local approach of we're your neighbor, we're, investors here, we're, realtors here, whatever. and then having my guy that's in Austin, that's, you know, a Georgia native or whatever, in Austin, you know, focusing on these Colorado deals. And now it's like, well, I'm going to focus on the Colorado deals, and I'm moving him to a different market that he's got that local advantage of. And I think that, you know, it's live anywhere, work anywhere. That's totally fine. But I do think that it's just like a weird shift that I had in my mind of like, like I'm the local here. I should be the one managing the local side of things. And for whenever I'm ready to outsource this, because I shift my time from focusing on these small, medium, and large size deals to just focusing on medium and large size deals, it'll be someone local that takes over that. And eventually, instead of, you know, subletting one individual office, I will, you know, buy or build my own office space that creates like a real work environment. You know, not quite like the Wolf of Wall Street, but almost like that, like in a fun way,
In a fun way.
less less drugged up way. I think that just seems really fun of being able to have and create a culture, because that's what I was good at in corporate America, was creating a culture of collaboration and inspiring everyone towards a common shared vision. And that's really hard to do remotely. You still can, but it's different interfacing with someone for 10, 20, 30 hours a week in person versus just a couple hours a week over Zoom.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with all that. I obviously work remotely, and something that is high on my important list is the geographical freedom, but I do think it's less optimal. And if you can do all or a lot of business where you are locally, that does help. I mean, having a Colorado branded company, we do much better with all of our direct to seller marketing to Colorado. There's no doubt it works very well. Um, so, you know, you have to weigh with all these points, you have to weigh what is really important to you and, you know, make your decisions accordingly. But absolutely, having a local office and working locally can be a huge advantage.
Well, and I think that's a good segue into, you know, one of my points I have here, which is everything doesn't have to be an investment decision.
Yeah.
I think that we're taught that on bigger pockets of like, you need to house hack and co-live and, you know, live in one unit and rent out the others. And every home that you need to buy needs to be something that you move out of in a couple of years and then keep as a rental and blah, 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 all this stuff. And for me, kind of shifting my perspective, because that was one of those agreements I made with myself whenever I was a teenager, that every decision that I do in life doesn't need to be an investment decision, has unlocked a lot of happiness. I'm moving in a week and a half. I'm keeping my own house as a rental, but I'm moving into a rental because we're in a position right now where, yeah, we could afford to buy a new home, but we're able to rent for about $2,000 less a month than it would be to purchase a new home. And we want to test the neighborhood out, see if this is kind of where we want to end up long term and have kids and all that kind of stuff. But I think it was a very painful decision-making process for me to be comfortable renting a home at 30 years old. And I think, you know, I did all the financial analysis and everything like that. And then at the end of the day, I was like, dude, I like this house. It's on the golf course. It's big. It's open. It's great for hosting. It's great for business. It's going to be so much more enjoyable than the current home, which we have, which is fine. It's comfortable. We did a bunch of improvements right before we moved out that we probably should have done earlier and gotten to enjoy it a little bit more. But I think it was just one of those decisions where it's like, I don't care. Like, my personal life doesn't need to be an investment decision. I run and manage a business. I've got, you know, I'm an accredited investor or whatever. You know, we've got enough money and everything like that. I want to live where I want to live. And I don't care if it's like the perfect investment decision.
Yeah, Mason, this is a conclusion we both reached around the same time. You know, rent is not cheap here in Encinitas, California, but I'm enjoying being here. I'm very glad that I've made the move, and it's okay. It's okay. You know, I'm doing what I can to arbitrage and rent out the space at Harbor Island that I was living in, but it's not perfect, and it definitely is more expensive to live out here, but that's okay. Like you said, there's got to be a balance, and I think with almost everything we're talking about in this show, that's all it is a spectrum, right? There's trade-offs with everything, and what trade-offs do you and don't you want to make? So you mentioned house hacking and moving and renting out your rooms, and I did that for years, and I'm glad I did. And there was trade-offs there. It wasn't fun. I got woken up a lot at night. I'm a light sleeper. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't really have people over that much, but it moved me so far ahead financially, starting from zero, that I'm glad I did it. And so, with all these conversations and points that we're making for our listeners, it's not a matter of what is or isn't right or wrong. It's a spectrum of trade-offs. And what trade-offs do you want to make? I think is really the best way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's a certain amount of focus that we need to place on the intangibles uh, with a lot of the decisions that we're making, where the home I'm moving into, I don't know how long we'll be in there. We have first right of refusal to buy it if they end up, if it's a military family, if they end up staying where they're getting PCS to, which we might want to, we might not want to. Don't really care, but we're excited for the change and the transition. And I think that regardless of it not being the perfect financial decision, it is the perfect financial decision if we end up moving and wanting to move to a different part of town or a different neighborhood, because buying a home at this current price with these mortgage rates, we would negative cash flow by $1,500 a month if we tried to rent it out at current market rates. But being in a nice different home, I think, is more motivating to me and I think that I would be able to compensate for any potential equity gained by just being more motivated by being in a place that I really enjoy living, and being able to play more golf, living on a golf course, and all of the intangibles that are associated with any decision that need to be made that are probably more important because they dictate your happiness or comfort level, compared to a couple hundred or a couple $1,000 over a yearly period of time. But it also depends on your life decisions and where you're at in life. It's different if you're a 22-year-old single dude versus a 30-year-old married guy. So it's, take it with a grain of salt on what we're saying. We're in different life positions. We're both financially comfortable. And I think that, it's just remembering that these decisions that you've made whenever you were young, when you were a kid, when you were closer to 10 years old than you are to 30 or 40, they don't need to be these rules that you live by for the rest of time. Life changes, you change. Prefrontal cortex doesn't really finish developing until you're about 27 years old. So realize that you're not perfect at executive functioning yet if you're too young and you're listening to this. So something neurologically kind of happens and you start thinking about things differently as you get older.
Yeah. Those are all good points, which leads me when you said changing, you're okay, you're allowed to change your mind on things. One of those things that I'm changing my mind on is buying and holding forever. Now, to be clear, I still have heard from every old investor ever that they wish they kept more. So that has not changed. And I'm going to continue to hold as much as I can as far as nice real estate. But as an example, I have a duplex in Parma, Ohio. It's now under contract to sell next month. And I was looking at the numbers and it really doesn't cash flow. The taxes are really high there. There's a margin every month, $500-600, but we look at realistically repairs over time. It's not really cash flowing, maybe $100 a month, whatever. And I looked at how much equity I had in it. And then I also looked at, all right, I can't really get much out of a cost segregation here. There's not a bunch of tax benefit to this property. It's not a substantial amortization every month. It was a cheap property. Like, why is this just sitting here? If I took this, I should get $100,000 to $110,000 out of it. If I took that money and I just put that into a couple solid land deals, it would be dramatically greater return and a much quicker scaling of my capital. And so I thought, this is silly. I shouldn't be just sitting on this thing, especially because that market is still really hot. Right now, I have some Colorado properties that maybe some of those same things apply, but it's a really bad time to sell in Colorado Springs right now. So I'm not going to sell those. Absolutely not. But it's a really good time to sell in Parma, Ohio. The amount of offers we had in the first 5 days was crazy. It's under contract over ask. And so, who knows if that one will close. As we all know, nothing counts till it's closed. But point being, I've changed my mind about holding everything, and I'm going to do more trading when it makes sense. And this one really made sense because I just wasn't getting much of a return out of it.
It's really a balance that you have to achieve of listening to the advice that people who have been doing it for much longer, who are very successful and much older than us, and kind of creating your own path and doing your own analysis. And I think the most important thing is just think about whatever decision you're making. and draw your own conclusions and take all these different variables to make that decision, as versus some precedent you created when you were a kid or some advice that some old guy gave you that, uh, you know, there are certain truths that will always be true forever. But the world is changing dramatically. And if there's an opportunity to, you know, diversify or trade your property into something that just makes more sense for the next 1 to 10 years of your life than this particular thing, it's okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of these decisions aren't going to negatively impact you, you know, in any capacity that you're going to like regret having done it. And I think that once again, with certain things, like you don't need to be a landlord to be successful in real estate. While owning property has a tremendous amount of benefits on the depreciation side of things, and things typically go up, you never know. All it takes is one weird governmental regulation or change that might make the property values, you know, tank or whatever it is. So I think it's, and I think along those lines, you know, I think initially in life I was so focused on only ever having investments in real estate, and, you know, we have a good amount of money in the market, and I think that's great. You know, it keeps going up each year. Sometimes there's dips, sometimes there's not, but over the next, you know, 20 to 30 years, that money will keep on multiplying, and it's okay to invest in the market. You don't have to be not diversified at all. And I hear that so often from a lot of the real estate industry, is that you need all of your money in real estate. Why would I ever do anything else at all? I think that's just a funny thing that I've kind of changed my mind on over the years too.
So I'm glad you said this, because it pairs well with what I was thinking, which was kind of an aside, but it applies to what you just said. If you don't have any money, then you don't have anything to diversify. If you put, you know, $4,000 in stocks and do one owner occupied down payment, you know, $5,000 on a down payment for a house, or $10,000, whatever, that's not meaningful diversification, because you don't have any money. So you need to make money. So you need to get really good at one thing. And so that, if that's you, or you only have $200,000 to your name, you need to make money first. And so that is what I love about real estate, and using that specific property. That was the first property I ever bought in 2018, beginning of 2018. So almost 7.5 years ago. And I probably had a $3,000 to $5,000 net worth at the time. I put 3.5% down. $133,500 was the purchase. So, you know, whatever, $6,000, including closing costs, call it $6,000, $7,000. And then I did have to put a new roof on that, and that was pretty much out of pocket. So I put, call it 18 to 20 grand into that thing, all in. And now 7.5 years later, so I'm not going to try and do what the actual IRR comes out to in my head, but 7.5 years later, I'm going to get about $110,000 out of that. And that is why real estate is so powerful when you have no money, or you don't make money. Because I could not have done that with stocks when my net worth was $3,000 to $5,000. And I've done that a whole bunch of times, and that has been really, really powerful. And so this is why I love real estate so much. But to Mason's point, you know, once I get to the point where, call it an 8-figure net worth, I absolutely am going to diversify more then, because I don't really need anything. And then it makes more sense to think more about preservation than aggressive growth. But if you have, you know, $100,000 net worth, I would be thinking about aggressive growth.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's walk before you run. And then also don't worry about scaling before you've even gotten started. So everyone has their own path with investment thesis and strategy that's going to work well for them. But I feel like it's really a wealth creation versus wealth preservation idea. And the younger you are, the riskier you are able to be, the more focused you should be on wealth creation. And I think that that's kind of one way to summarize one of the main points we're talking about is, or that we haven't talked about too much, but we've mentioned a bunch on other episodes, is that you don't need to worry about preserving wealth when you don't have any.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of, hey, I need to accumulate as much rental units as I possibly can at a very young age, while there is benefit to that strategy for sure, it's not necessarily the best way to think whenever you are super young. You should figure out really how to make as much money as you can. And I think where I'm at too within Business Gen is really focusing on the idea of asymmetric bets and reducing the amount of deals that I'm doing. They don't all have to be big deals, but even on the small deals, I'm like, to me, I'm I'm less focused on hitting these like, really small return type of things. I just want it to be more guaranteed over the long run. And I think that whenever I was first getting started in this business, I just like kind of did any deal. Just about, yeah, I said no to a lot, but I was way more focused on getting enough transactions and experience under my belt rather than the quality of the deal. And now I feel like I'm way more focused on just doing really good quality deals, even if it takes a really, really long time. And I think we've heard that from plenty of guests on our recent podcast that haven't bought anything for years because the numbers didn't pencil out. And I think that's a piece of advice that it's okay to take is like, set yourself up financially, but don't do deals that are going to make it worse whenever it's not a good time. Every deal is not a good deal. And it's okay to say no for potentially months or years, depending on where you're at in life. I don't know if you want to add to that or anything. That's not exactly something I had on my list.
Yeah, there's kind of several different points, and it is correlated to a few of the bullet points I had on our list over here, where avoiding vanity metrics. What is a deal? How many deals have you done? It's so stupid. I mean, it gives you some idea as to iteration experience, but a deal could be so many different things. We're having a friend of mine out here on the show who hasn't done that many deals, but the deals are like multiple 7 to 8 figures each. So it's just a whole different story. So avoiding vanity metrics, I think, is a really important thing to pull out of that, and not doing deals or buying units just for the sake of doing deals or buying units. Now, to your point, Mason, about some of the guests we've had, some of those people are in a position where they don't need anything. They don't need any additional income to live. They have a bunch of passive income or residual income coming in. Okay, that's not most people, and you do need to make money, but I really think it's still useful, even for you or me, who are actively trying to make money, of really making sure there's no way to lose on all the deals we're taking on. I haven't lost money on many land deals, and I'm having one of my bigger losses right now because I'm just not going to buy a property that I paid for the entirety of quiet title on. Because it's in Florida. It looked like a great deal when we started the quiet title process. I look at a lot of Florida right now and I'm like, man, I don't want to touch it. I don't know. It's a nice lot, a nice area, but this might not sell for years. And so I'll lose like $4,500 just for having paid for the quiet title. And I'd rather do that than spend $47,000 to buy it and it end up sitting for years and years. So, I got a little bit off there, but I think,
well, and here I'll take it and run with it. And one, shoot, like being able to say no gives you a lot of power in a negotiation. So who knows? Maybe you could say, look, I don't know if you're already canceled the contract or anything, but say, hey, look, I can't buy it for this. For me, you can turn things into deals that weren't before. If you can buy so low that it doesn't matter, or if you could buy it for $4,500, who knows? Maybe, it could be a grand slam deal, but if not, then it doesn't matter. And I think something that I want to clarify is, while I'm saying no to a lot of deals, that are more speculative in nature, I'm saying yes to a lot of really, really small deals, where I can't exactly lose. And that's more on the realtor side of things. Like I'm representing people on, $65,000 lot purchases at 2.5% commission, which I'm making like almost no money on those. Like I'm making like $1,000, maybe a little bit more after everything, all my costs and stuff. And that's fine for me. Because, I'm working on one right now of, it's 5 at once, $64,000 deals, which that ends up being, it's like $8,000 in commission, which is awesome. And I'm doing that to gain the experience. And it's something where it's like, I will still say yes to deals of any size if it's a bet that I'm willing to make, as versus saying yes to any deal size where it's a bet that is much more speculative in nature. So I think that that's something that I've just changed my mind about. And I think that where that idea and that mindset change has come is having experienced loss, which I didn't experience until I'd been in business for a long enough period of time. I won so easily, and I think it wasn't my own skill. I think it was just the market dynamics. It was really hard to screw up making money in land in, the early 2020s. And it's a lot easier to do that now. And whenever you grow in deal size, you start understanding I understand how this developer went bankrupt because this deal went sideways or whatever potentially happened there. So I think that that's also something that I've changed my mind about too in relation to all this is, and I know I'm kind of going all over the place with the deal size thing, but I think my first deal being such a big one, I think at the beginning I was like, I should only do big deals. And then I lost on some bigger deals or they didn't go the way I wanted to. And I'm like, oh, I should only do small deals. And then I'm like, the deal size, I don't care. I'm deal size agnostic, but I am very deal return focused where it's just a bet that doesn't feel like a gamble anymore. Because I feel like sometimes there's deals where it feels like a gamble and I run away from those. I won't do them. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I do deals all the time where how much the upside is a gamble, but the capital in my mind has really no chance of being lost unless something crazy happens in the world economically. So I agree with that. I think that's well said. Anything else you want to say on that before I pivot to a couple different points? Okay,
No.
A couple really specific things here, and I have social media gurus on the list, and the reason that I put this here is because so much of the, in hindsight, bad advice that we're now saying we've changed our mind on originally came from people we heard on podcasts and social media. And the irony of this is obviously Mason and I have a podcast, but I am more skeptical. If somebody tells me they have a business and they also have a podcast and coaching program, I am massively more skeptical of them being legitimate than if they're unknown. And I'm finding that most people that actually have businesses do not have any social media presence or podcast and don't sell a course because they're busy working on their business. Now, I know some people who are very legitimate that sell courses and have podcasts, and we've had a lot of these people on our show. So again, it's only some people, but the point I want to make is being very careful and intentional about who you're taking your advice from. And are they legitimate? And a lot of the advice I got from my older friend who taught me the business, who's never been on social media in his life, has remained to be very true. And I'm finding, oh yeah, that's why he told me that 7.5 years later, as opposed to what I heard on social media from flashy people that, maybe they turned out to be a little bit full of shit. So just be mindful who you take advice from.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because someone has a large following doesn't mean they're legitimate. And I think that's something to remember is I used to be impressed with the vanity metric of how many followers people have. And then you'll see it. It's like kind of funny. And I say this, Dan and I have like no followers between the two of us. You'll see people with 8, 10, 100, 200,000 followers that post reels and they get 100 views. And it's because all their followers are fake. So there's a lot of not just bad and poor information out there, but there's also a lot of fake vanity with the growth metrics associated with what people are doing. And yeah, just like Dan said, there's plenty of people that have coaching programs and that are on podcasts or have their own podcasts that are extremely legitimate. We're at the beginning of podcasting. I know that most people feel like it's a saturated industry. We're at the very, very beginning of this. And I think over the years, more and more people will do it. I almost think of the podcast as like a kind of like fun blog of my life and thoughts and business that eventually my kids are going to be able to listen to in decades of, we'll have 1,000+ episodes that you can go back and listen to Mason's insights from when he was 27 or 28 years old versus, what he thinks whenever he's 40. And so I think that we are at the beginning of it. And, it's just listen to the information whenever you hear something that sounds too good to be true, be wary because it usually is. I remember, hearing podcasts with different people on, the big famous podcasts that were interviewed and everyone's like, oh my God, this guy's a god, this guy's amazing. And then you see 2 years later, they end up in federal prison for fraud or whatever it might be. So
yeah,
take everything with a grain of salt. And just because people are on podcasts or legitimatized by the amount of following that they have doesn't mean it's good advice and that you should actually listen to it.
Yeah, people with a lot of money in business, I'm not talking about movie stars and pop stars and that sort of thing, but in business, people that actually have a lot of money tend to be very quiet. And they are not loud. And I mean that literally and figuratively. And so one thing that's related to this is I pretty much refuse to ever use any sort of third-party vendor for my business again. And I don't mean in data or a CRM. I'm not going to build everything in house, but I mean in the really tactical stuff of sales, of actually creating the marketing, of pulling the data. We're pulling our data using PropStream, which has continued to be very effective. And a lot of these third-party services come from social media gurus who did, a few deals when the market was hot. They were better at marketing online than they were at actually doing the business. They created a following, a coaching course, and then they go and create a bunch of, oh, here's our new data pulling tool. Here's our new CRM. Here's our new cold calling service, because they couldn't actually make it in the business, and they're no longer actually in the business. So they don't have that much insight into what's happening right now. And I'm seeing this a lot right now. A lot of people that are selling different things and people are following them, but these people don't actually know what's going on. And so I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind on this, but I do not trust a lot of these third-party vendors, at least that are trying to do your marketing for you. I think it's a terrible idea to go with these people.
Well, I think something to understand about all of this is a white labeled version of the exact same thing getting resold over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's so easy to make a CRM. It's so easy to make a data pulling, source. And we hear that all the time on our, community calls that we do of like, have you guys heard of this new land software that does this, that, and the other thing? I'm like, no, there's a new one every week. And yeah, there's maybe some stuff that's better than the other one, but part of it is like, PropStream sold for over $100 million, I believe, or 50 million or 30 million or whatever it was. It was eight or nine figures. There's a reason it sold. It's a good quality tool that has worked for a long time, and it's going to continue to work for a long time. And I just don't care about what new white label software from Go High Level is getting marketed to me in whatever capacity, because you heard it on a YouTube video and you have to sign up through their link. Don't sign up through any other links or anything like that, because then, they're going to miss out on their affiliate income. And so I think just recognize the motivators behind all this, which is to make affiliate income, which affiliate income is awesome. And we have, I'm an affiliate to a couple of different softwares that I really like and really enjoy. But realize the next best thing is probably not something that you just got advertised the crap out of, because, the people that are using it really might not know what they're doing.
Well, and this relates to a lot of what's the new frenzy? What's the new frenzy that everybody's doing? And so it's so funny. I remember so many people on social media saying, oh, cold calling is working so well. And then all these third-party cold callers came about inland specifically, and just speaking the land community, late last year. And what do you know? Mail has been extremely productive for me this year, because I remember seeing that like, oh, time to send more mail. Mail is going to make more sense. And so, of course, lately it's been all about PPC, right? You can't get deals without PPC. Mail doesn't work, as you obviously know, Mason. And so avoiding what the gurus are preaching and the herd is following and running towards, like right now, I would definitely not go do planning mobile homes on my lots, because that's the thing that's being pumped by gurus right now. And it's a good business. You can absolutely make a business out of it, but that's what's being, praised as the new big thing. It's not new. It's not big. It's been a business for a long time. People have liked mobile homes for a very, very long time, and it's still viable, but now you have a bunch of newbies running towards it. And thankfully, a lot of newbies have run away from just the direct-to-seller marketing with mail, and it's working much better. So not following the herd that's just following social media gurus has been useful too.
Yeah, no, and that's the funny thing. Don't listen to anything we're saying. We're not trying to give you advice or anything like that. I think it's just what we've thought about and changed our minds on and experienced ourselves, and we're hoping to share that our insights are unique to ourselves. We have these experiences. I shared on social media yesterday like a funny story related to direct mail, where I've heard direct mail does not work from the people that are trying to sell you something. It's always, if they're trying to sell you something, take it with a grain of salt. We're not trying to sell you anything. And it was hilarious because she got the direct mail, which is like a tongue-in-cheek thing, saying like, are you tired of getting a bunch of direct mail as I send direct mail? So realize I'm a hypocrite. And she ripped it up, and then, she saw like my picture and everything on it, and it said land on it. And she thought about me, during her hike, and now I got a listing from it. Be a decent listing. I'll make 15, 18 grand, if everything kind of checks out with the market and everything. And all from one direct mail postcard as a realtor, which I think it's just funny. I think that people just want to sell you something, and I think Dan and I both feel just ridiculous about it. Of like, if you're trying to sell something, just say that you're trying to sell something. I think that'll get you so much more business than trying to act like you're bigger than you are. And I think that adds something. I don't have this on the list here either, Dan, but it's the idea of fake it till you make it. I think that so many people like recommend that you should act like you're an expert in a field that you're not necessarily an expert in order to gain business. Where I got an email 2 days ago from someone that I don't know how they got my stuff, but they were like, I specialize in vacant land in Colorado. If you could send me your investment criteria, I work with a network of off-market, landowners and realtors and investors and everything like that. And I responded with, fantastic. That sounds amazing. Would love to work with you. Send me a portfolio of the last 10 deals in Colorado that you did this year. And they responded, actually, I've never done a deal before. I'm hoping to learn from investors like you to be able to start doing more deals in Colorado.
Yeah.
And I appreciated their honesty. I haven't decided if I would respond or not because they were transparent. But I think that idea of fake it till you make it. Be like, I'm a real estate investor. It's like, no, you're not. You own a single family home that you might rent out one day. You're not a real estate investor because you listen to a freaking episode of a podcast. And so I think that right there, like it just comes across as so disingenuous. And I think that probably makes people laugh when I tell people that are really in land that I'm in land, because I've only done so much. And some people are impressed by it, some aren't. I don't really care, but I think the fake it till you make it thing is something I've changed my mind about, which I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny. I still get imposter syndrome sometimes. I don't say I'm a real estate investor. I say, I'm in real estate. Most of the time when people ask, I just trying to, deflect the question. But I wanted to say one more thing. That was all very legitimate. I agree. I don't really have more to say on that. Fake it till you make it's ridiculous. Honesty works much better. But with the third-party vendors, number one, I'm speaking from having made the mistake of wasted a bunch of money and ineffective marketing, having hired third-party vendors. And one more thing I'll say just on that whole topic, Mason mentioned people are just trying to sell you something. When people make statements about never and always, I pretty much always write them off immediately, and they're just trying to sell. So this is the only way to get, like, I see this so often on social media. You have to do this, or this never works, or it tends to be just absolute bullshit, and they're just trying to sell you something. And I always wonder, I'm like, who is this working on? Who is falling for this? Because there's just a number of people I see that I know people are buying their stuff. I'm like, I have never been so turned off by somebody's marketing because this is so stupid. Like, so anyways, I'll stop ranting, but no, I mean, there's a good Star Wars quote around that, I think.
Yeah, probably. And that's the funny thing is like dogmatic in your thinking of, this is the only way.
Yeah.
This is the only path. I think you see that a lot, and I'll relate it to kind of the corporate higher education related world, where it's like you need to get this undergraduate degree and then you need to work for this long and then get this graduate degree in order to get on this pipeline to do this thing or whatever. And it's like, no, you heard that advice from some blog somewhere. Like there's a million ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of ways to make money in this world and a lot of ways to succeed. And it's not necessarily going to be linear. And sometimes it will be linear. And who knows? We don't know. I mean, shoot, I met a guy that flips cows for a living. Beautiful home. He buys underfed cows, fattens them up, and resells them and makes a ton of money on it. And I'm like, dude, that's entrepreneurship right there. I never would have even begun to thought about something like that. And so I think the point that Dan and I are making is just like when people are speaking in absolutes and uncertainty, recognize that we as humans have like such a limited experience. The only way we gain experience is by being alive long enough, traveling, exploring new ideas, reading books and everything like that. And regardless of how much you read or how much you do, your life experience is still so minimal compared to the greater population. And you thinking you know the way is ridiculous because you don't. And it doesn't matter whether you're worth $200 billion or $1 million or $2,000 of you are such an individual that what works for you and doesn't work for you might be the exact opposite or exact same for someone else. And who are you to decide?
Yeah. Yeah. You might know a way, but that is not the only way. I don't really have anything else, Mason. I hit on most of what I wanted to say. Anything else on your end?
No, I think we could monologue and complain for forever, but no, I think this was fun. Hope those of you that stuck around for the whole show got some sort of insights out of this or something that is valuable. The most important thing I think to take away is just examine beliefs that you have or ideas you have, really specifically related to business and investing is kind of what we harped on the most, and make sure it's not ideas that you've held fixed in your mind forever that aren't relevant to your current life station and life position and the current market and everything else. Because otherwise you might end up getting stuck. And the reason you're stuck is because you're thinking like a teenager instead of a grown person.
Yeah, well, and this really relates to an article I read this morning of people of these ideas, these beliefs, these metrics being so tied to somebody's ego. It's almost like a religion. I always talk about Howard Marks's articles. I read his most recent memo this morning. It was more about economics, and he talked about how it's so hard to talk to a lot of people about a lot of these economic ideas because it's part of their political ideology, which for many people is like a religion. And he's like, so this is so intertwined with their identity that you can't even have a conversation about that. And a lot of real estate people, it's like, oh, the 500 units I have is so intertwined with my ego, or the 100 deals I do a year is so important to my brand and my ego that, oh, maybe doing far fewer deals, but much larger, or maybe selling off a lot of the units and just buying some nice ones might be more beneficial. But your dogma is so religiously attached to your identity that you don't want to make those decisions. And so try and just being less dogmatic and aware of where you are dogmatic, I think can help you make better decisions and stop, hurting yourself.
Yep. And that awareness is key because it's so hard to be. And we recognize that it's like, that's why one of my things was take my own advice. And it's because I operate in dogma and bias that it's hard for me to do that, and hard for all of us to do that. But that being said, everyone, we appreciate you guys sticking around. If you made it to the end, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe on any and all platforms that the Big Picture Blueprint is on. But this is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkost signing off.